And we would like to welcome Jacklyn Garcia to the program. She is an immigration attorney with the Lincoln-Goldfinch law firm in Austin, and she works on deportation defense and humanitarian visa cases there. And Jackie, welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet, you bet. So, Jackie, we have you here today to talk about a new Biden administration policy that they say has dramatically lowered the percentage of migrants at the southern border who are entering the U.S. and who are allowed to apply for asylum. Now, what can you tell us about this program, and is it much like the one that was previously in place?
So, yes, there are some similarities. The Title 42 policy that was in place during the Trump administration and during the COVID-19 pandemic was actually not an immigration law. It was a public health law that was put into place that happened to, or strategically had an impact on immigration at the southern border. Once Title 42 was lifted, and the Biden administration put in the new policy for immigration at the southern border, we saw a lot of the same consequences for asylum seekers, namely that they were being prevented from presenting themselves or seeking asylum, and that they are at a higher risk of being victims of crime and being, preyed upon by organized crime along these border towns.
Okay, and so what are they saying, that without these new limits that border crossings could overwhelm the local cities and their resources and such like that?
Sure. So, I mean, anytime you have a large number of people seeking asylum in the U.S., the border towns, of course, feel that impact. But what we know is that the overwhelming majority of asylum seekers do not stay in those towns. They are trying to reunite with family in other places. They are often, relocated by immigration officials who sort of facilitate that. And so while it may be a temporary drain on resources for certain towns, that's never expected to last. Because people typically move on.
Well, are some of them ineligible for asylum because they've crossed through a third country on the way to the U.S., or is the stay in Mexico policy? What's that all about?
So the Biden administration's new policy for people who pass through other countries, it's very similar to what we had before. Ultimately, an immigration judge would have to decide if they failed to seek asylum in another country and if their reasons for not doing so were valid. For example, if the persecution that they were fleeing existed in that country as well. And when we're talking about surges in migration from the northern triangle countries, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, much of the persecution is very similar across those countries. The cartels and the political violence is pretty consistent. And, it's up to the immigration judge to determine ultimately if the asylum seeker has a valid reason for not seeking asylum in those countries. And I think it's going to take a while before what the Biden administration has in mind with this policy can actually go into effect, because the countries that people are passing through do not have the resources or the asylum programs in place to help people who are passing through.
Now, according to some recent court filings regarding this new policy, the figures that I have here, those adult migrants who are able to pass initial screenings at the border has dropped from 83% to 46%. So that means that lower numbers of folks are being allowed across the border. Am I right about that?
Yes, that's our understanding as well. There have been significant hurdles for people to be able to cross the border and seek asylum, and those who are wishing to present at the port of entry and need to use the CBP-1 app that they have to seek asylum. There's been all sorts of challenges with those apps and people, logging on first thing in the morning when the portal opens and doing that consistently for weeks and not being able to get an appointment. So some people are still going to be crossing the border. But I think it's important to keep in mind when we talk about this that even if someone crosses the border and is apprehended by Border Patrol inside U.S. territory, it is still legal for them to seek asylum. And so what we're probably seeing is that a lot of people are trying to do it the way that the government has asked them to do it with the app. And when they are not able to get through, they are desperate and they are crossing the border and they're seeking asylum once they're inside U.S. borders.
And Jackie, what kind of cases exactly have you worked on of late?
So in the last year and a half, I think we've worked on dozens of cases. I've personally taken about 15 cases to trial in the San Antonio Immigration Court and one in Laredo as well. And what we're seeing is, a lot of the same patterns of gang violence and, violence against women in the Northern Triangle countries that I mentioned earlier. But we're also seeing asylum seekers from countries like Cameroon, where there has been political instability. And we're also seeing, of course, a lot of asylum seekers from Venezuela who are fleeing political oppression as well. The same goes for Nicaragua. So we're seeing sort of a mixed bag of new political phenomenon that are happening and new uprisings and, responses to oppression. And then we're also seeing, a lot of the continuing violence in the Northern Triangle countries that we've been seeing for the last decade.
Well, let's say that a group gets across illegally, okay, and they are here in the United States and, perhaps in Texas, and they contact you. What do you ever have anything like that who have crossed illegally but they want to get right with everything?
Yes, of course. I mean, the thing about the border that I think people don't understand is that there are no mile markers and street signs telling you, you've crossed the border, you're
Right.
this many miles from the nearest port of entry.
Right.
It's very much a wasteland. People don't know where they are, they get lost. Smugglers leave people behind under very dangerous circumstances, and people get lost, they get disoriented, they get sick, they get hurt. And so we often have people call us and tell us, I was lost, I was afraid, I didn't know where I was, I just had to keep walking until somebody found me, and I never came across Border Patrol, and I really need to seek asylum, I want to get my paperwork in order. And so, there are some cases where we can still help.
Okay. Well, that is very interesting. Now, do you see that the current the newest law that it's under the Biden administration, do you see that it is working or no?
I personally don't think it's working. I think we are seeing lower numbers because that is what they want us to see. I think that, we are preventing people from seeking asylum. I think it's going to be a major problem. I anticipate, litigation in federal court. I think there are a lot of people who are trying to seek asylum who aren't able to get through the app, who are afraid to cross the border because of the higher penalties and the potential jail time they could face if they are apprehended and then try to re-enter again. So I'm not sure that these new policies are in everyone's best interest. I think there will be a lot of challenges to them, but we'll just have to see.
All right. We've been speaking this morning to Jacklyn Garcia. She is an immigration attorney with the Lincoln-Goldfinch law firm in Austin. And Jacklyn, how might our listeners find you guys?
Our website is Lincoln-Goldfinch.com, so you can find us there. And our office number is 512-599-8500. We're always offering free consultations as well.
All right. Jacklyn Garcia, thank you so much for being with us.